I have 3 childhood friends, all boys. I'm the only girl among the 4 prominent families. But after my family fell into decline, the elders started planning a marriage alliance. They wanted me to marry one of them. Augustine, the school's resident bad boy, gave me a disdainful once-over and rejected me bluntly. Can't marry her. I like the obedient type. I just see her as a regular friend. The sweet, puppy-like Marco gave a regretful shrug. She's like a big sister to me. Nothing more. The sharp-tongued genius Nestor didn't even bother to sugarcoat it. She's reckless and foolish, not suitable to be my wife. Their rejections came without hesitation or tact. My parents could only smile awkwardly and try to ease the tension. I gave up completely, so I turned to my parents and calmly said, "Mom, Dad, I have a boyfriend." Chapter 1. Augustine had his sleeves rolled up, one arm slung over the back of his chair, lounging lazily. He was laughing and chatting with Marco. Meanwhile, Nestor was glued to his phone, his long fingers idly scrolling as the glare from his lenses gave him a cold, detached air. My parents tried to smooth things over with small talk, but the boys weren't interested. They half listened, clearly impatient. Until I spoke that one sentence, the entire room fell silent. Augustine and Marco both turned to stare at me. Even Nestor looked up, his gaze sharp and unreadable. I acted like I didn't notice. I just turned to my equally stunned parents and said, "You should have told me earlier this was a matchmaking dinner. Would have saved us all this misunderstanding." "They're right," I continued. "Even though we grew up together, I've only ever seen them as friends, as brothers. There's nothing romantic between us." My parents hadn't told me beforehand that this was a setup. They were afraid I'd be too proud to accept it. They'd thought it through carefully, though. Their intended match was Marco Sue, 2 years younger than me. Cheerful, clingy, and someone I'd never really fought with. But for some reason, the other 2 showed up too. I was a little upset they'd kept it from me, but what I felt more was heartbreak and helplessness. Back when things weren't this bad for our family, my mom once asked if I had someone I liked. I turned away and didn't answer. She saw right through me. She smiled and asked if it was one of the 3 boys. I flushed red, angry and embarrassed, and told her to stop talking nonsense. That was all the confirmation she needed. After that, I became more guarded, hid my feelings carefully. Even they couldn't tell who I really liked. Then my dad made a bad investment. Our family fortune crumbled. The Liu family fell into disgrace, and the other 3 families began to subtly distance themselves. My mother thought, if she didn't fight for me now, her stubborn, prideful daughter might never confess her feelings in this lifetime. So she took a bold step, arranged this dinner without telling me. Even though the Sue parents didn't show up, the Lin and Jean boys, Augustine and Nestor, came. My parents still treated it seriously. They opened up and explained our situation, said if feelings were mutual between me and any of the boys, a marriage alliance would be wonderful. If not, then it was just a friendly dinner, no pressure. What they didn't expect was that the boys I'd grown up with, the ones who once held me like a precious gem in the palm of their hands, would reject me so cruelly, so publicly. I was used to it by now, but when I saw the painful effort it took for my parents to keep smiling, it crushed something in me. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to say something. Before they could ask me what was going on, I stood up, looked around, and said coldly, "Doesn't seem like any of you really wanted to be here anyway. In that case, let's just call it a night and go our separate ways." Chapter 2. My parents went to get the car. I was just about to follow when someone grabbed my arm from behind. I turned and was met with Augustine's clearly irritated face. He wore a crisp white shirt over a low-cut black tee, casually unbuttoned to reveal 2 newly pierced diamond studs on his collarbones, flashy, rebellious, and wild. Just like him, he looked down at me, lips curling into a mocking smile. "Long time no see, your temper's gotten worse." "Huh? Weren't you on a long break? Where'd you pick up a boyfriend? How old is he? What does he look like? Do I know him?" The questions came one after another, intense and invasive. Each one sounded almost concerned, but I knew how it would go if I answered honestly. He'd blink innocently, then mock me like always, telling me I wasn't good enough. It had happened too many times. I snapped, jerking my arm out of his grasp. I shouted, None of your business. Augustine stared at his hand in shock. His smirk vanished. His brows drew together, and his face darkened even more. Then Marco peeked out from behind him. He grinned, flashing his sharp little canine teeth. Whoa, what's with the attitude? His voice was light and teasing, always tinged with playfulness. It made people feel at ease, but the words he said were always the opposite. What? Sis? Got yourself some random guy out there? Weren't the three of us enough for you? The grin on his face deepened. He stared at me and said, deliberately, so shameless. Marco loved joking that the three of them were my personal harem, as if I was some kind of high-ranking courtesan, special and spoiled. But in our little group of four, I was always the one trying the hardest to fit in. Back then, I lied to myself, told myself that even if they liked teasing me, even humiliating me sometimes, that was just how boys were. After all, they invited me to hang out, and they'd stand up for me when others bullied me. We grew up together. Surely, I must mean something to them. That illusion shattered after what happened last time. It was only then that I realized I was nothing but their plaything, a clown they toyed with when they were bored. I met Marco's gaze. He was still smiling, clearly waiting to see my reaction to his nasty comment. But I didn't give him that satisfaction. Expressionless, I looked at him for a moment, then turned and walked away. I hadn't made it far when another voice, colder this time, called out behind me, "When are you coming back to class?" I paused, didn't turn around, but I still gave him an answer. In a couple of days. Behind me, I heard Marco click his tongue. He grumbled loud enough for me to hear. Figures, always soft with him. But really, you two broke up ages ago. Sis, still playing favorites? Funny, isn't it? Out of the three of them, Nestor had been the most against the arranged marriage. He called me stupid and reckless, said he'd never marry someone like me. And yet, he was the one I had actually dated. Worse, Nestor was the one who confessed to me first. Chapter 3. Unlike the wealth passed down for generations in the Lin, Sue, and Jean families, our Liu family had only recently risen to prominence. To be precise, it was thanks to my dad seizing a lucky break during a time of economic boom. From there, he soared straight into the elite circles of the big three. But that was just surface level. Behind our backs, people mocked us, said we were just nouveau riche, flashy but unworthy, that we'd eventually fall right back where we came from. I was young back then, and hot-headed. I wanted to fight back. But my dad stopped me. He said seriously, if we want to stay in this circle, we need to build good relationships with these people. So I endured it. I pretended to be carefree and thick-skinned, worked hard to blend into that world of rich kids. When I realized how much influence Augustine and the others had, I clung to them like a shadow. From elementary through middle school, I followed them, from being the outcast they pranked to slowly gaining acceptance, all the way to university. Even though it started out as my father's plan, just another social maneuver. Over time, I really did treat them as my best friends. Then my dad's investment crashed. The stock market tanked. The others immediately began to distance themselves. In the long silence that followed, I slowly came to understand, we had never been equals. This time, I didn't beg to stay in their circle. I just went to school like normal, tried to adapt to life without them. And then, I got kidnapped. It was a group of familiar faces, people I'd once considered friends. At first, I was dazed. I couldn't believe it. Some of them were the same ones who used to hang out with me, so I actually thought it was a prank. I even laughed and said, if you need money, I can lend you some. But then they named a number I could never afford. That's when I knew they were dead serious. They stripped me of everything valuable I had, kept me locked up for 2 days with no food or water, and when I overheard them whispering that they didn't dare demand ransom from my parents, and planned to sell me off instead, a wave of absurdity and horror crashed over me. It was like watching a group of kids holding knives and claiming they were going to kill someone. Ridiculous. Because they were so young. Terrifying. Because they actually looked serious, and those knives were real. And that absurdity turned to pure, bone-deep fear. When they began tearing off my clothes and taking pictures, I curled into a ball, screamed at them, cursed them, threatened them. but everyone could see how terrified I was beneath the bravado. One of them, Samuel, used to be my friend. He crouched next to me and sighed, smiling as he reached toward me. He said, "Elise, forgive me. I actually really like you." I didn't want it to come to this. He didn't finish. His words turned into a scream. I bit his hand with all the strength I had, almost breaking his fingers. Chaos erupted. They all rushed to pull me off him. And then, the warehouse door burst open. A beam of blinding light flooded the room, driving away the darkness. A tall silhouette stood at the entrance, backlit like a figure from a dream. It was Nestor. Chapter 4. Ever since the day I was rescued, I didn't dare step outside for a long time. The betrayal of friends without warning, the sudden kidnapping and extortion, and the utter humiliation of being stripped and photographed without dignity, all of it carved deep, dark shadows into my heart. Stroke by painful stroke, my fragile psyche was teetering on the edge. And during that time, it was Nestor, cold and cutting as he usually was, who stayed by my side. I had never seen him so gentle, so patient, especially toward me. It was like he could sense every moment I was about to fall apart. He, who was never much of a talker, began finding all kinds of reasons to chat with me every day. I lived in his private apartment. He had already arranged my leave of absence from school. He hid everything from my parents. He even tracked down Samuel and the others through his personal network and made sure they were taught a lesson. Even Augustine and Marco, his closest friends, he kept them away. He didn't let a word of what had happened leak out. And he didn't let anyone near me. No one could reopen the wound. Like a cold rain quietly evaporating in the warmth of spring, he shielded me with silent, unwavering protection. His calm maturity, his quiet strength. Little by little, I opened up. I couldn't help but rely on him. Eventually, I couldn't hold back anymore. With my heart full of hope and uncertainty, I asked him, "Why are you being so kind to me?" I still remember it clearly. He was in comfy loungewear, sitting beside me on the carpet, his sleeves pushed up, pale yet strong arms exposed, twirling a pen smoothly between his long fingers. He had taken off his glasses. A few strands of dark hair fell over his forehead. He looked relaxed, even a bit lazy. But when he looked at me, his eyes were soft in a way words couldn't describe, almost indulgent. Instead of answering, he asked a question in return, with a gentle smile. He said, "Wanna be my girlfriend?" It was like an arrow shot straight to the heart. I fell for it, fell for that rare, almost intoxicating tenderness, and I had no reason to say no. Under his care, I slowly crawled out of the darkness. I became cheerful again. Even now, when I think back on it, it still feels surreal. Nestor might have seemed indifferent, but deep down, he was incredibly controlling. When we were dating, Augustine had to stop slinging his arm around my shoulder. Marco held back from his usual over-the-top teasing. Even the smallest sign of my discomfort, he noticed. He took it seriously. I was so happy. I almost believed I'd fallen in love. I imagined, over and over again, what kind of wedding dress I'd wear when I married him. But it was all an act. He was acting. Everything he gave me, every smile, every gentle word, all of it was fake. I'll never forget that day. The first time I ever cooked, with hands covered in cuts and bruises. And after wasting a mountain of ingredients, I finally managed to make a full meal, 18 dishes. All because Nestor said he wanted to eat something I made with my own hands for his birthday dinner. Then the doorbell rang. I opened the door, expecting praise, gratitude. What I got instead was laughter. Baffling, merciless laughter. Marco was holding his stomach, laughing so hard he couldn't stand straight. Augustine was whistling, phone in hand, recording me in my apron, spatula in hand, standing there confused and embarrassed. And Nestor, he leaned lazily against the doorframe, smiling faintly as he watched everything unfold inside, like a player who'd already won the game, calmly enjoying the final score screen. Didn't think our proud little Lou heiress had such a housewife side to her. Ha, ha ha ha. Good thing we only bet on a month. If this kept going, Nestor, she'd probably even have your kid for you. Ha ha ha. Ha. Interesting. Guess it's my turn to play next. Ha. When Augustine said that, he paused. He turned back to glance at me, then shrugged, like he couldn't care less. With a grin, he said, "Oh, she heard that? Guess we'll have to spice things up next round." Chapter 5. I stood there, for what felt like forever. A sheet of ice crept up from my feet, inch by inch, until it froze me completely. Even swallowing felt like gulping down knives. Then came the shaking, small, uncontrollable trembles that took over my entire body. My eyes moved silently toward the person standing farthest from me, Nestor. My lips parted, trembling. I wanted to ask, was it real? That time when I asked you why you were so kind to me, you dodged the question. Now I know why. You were waiting for this moment. But after more than a month together, wasn't there even the tiniest flicker of guilt? Even a sliver of mercy? Nestor held my gaze for 3 long seconds. His smile faded just slightly, and then he looked away, calm and unbothered. I slowly shut my mouth. No need to ask. No need to humiliate myself further. I got my answer. I thought I would cry. Thought I'd sob hysterically. Drown them all in my tears. Watch them panic. Scramble. Feel ashamed. But I couldn't cry. My throat was tight. My chest ached. My body turned ice cold. But my eyes were dry, barren. Not a single tear. Not even a word. I just stood there, still and quiet, surrounded by laughter sharp as blades, until they laughed themselves out, until they started to notice how still I was, how lifeless. And then I let out a shallow, broken breath, with a hoarse, barely recognizable voice. I said, "Let's never speak again." From that day on, I took a leave of absence from school. Soon after, my father's reputation and business both tanked, but he refused to accept it, convinced he could make a comeback, which only made things worse. If it weren't for my mother, who clung to one last chunk of savings and refused to let him touch it, I probably wouldn't even be able to afford tuition. We moved out of the upscale district. I sold off everything expensive I owned, my designer bags, my piano, even my motorcycle and watches. Watching the bank balance grow was the only thing that eased my anxiety a little. Beyond that, I asked my boyfriend, Joe, to help talk some sense into my dad. Joe was brilliant. He'd started his own company back in high school and was now running a successful business. When it came to anything business-related, he was way more capable than someone like me who barely scraped by in school. And honestly, bossing him around didn't make me feel guilty at all. On the first day I returned to school, Joe's driver made a special trip to pick me up from my new place in the suburbs. Even though I no longer had a car, my quality of life hadn't dropped one bit. At the school gate, Joe stepped out, gentlemanly as ever, to open the door and offer me his hand. Just then, a deafening roar blasted down the road. The screech of tires cut through the air. Augustine skidded into view, spinning into a perfect motorcycle drift. Helmet tucked under his arm, he stalked toward us. Face like thunder, long legs striding with attitude. His eyes locked onto Joe's hand, still holding mine. Without warning, he flung his helmet straight at us. Joe and I instinctively stepped apart. Before I could even get mad, Augustine sneered. "So this is your so-called boyfriend? Your taste sucks. When did you start sneaking around behind our backs?" Chapter 6. The way he said it, like I had cheated on him. Who did he think he was to me? I was about to snap back on instinct, but then I caught something off about him, something strange in his tone. I hesitated. Then, calmly, I turned my eyes away from Augustine and looked straight at Joe. I reached out and took his hand, on my own. With a sweet voice, I said, "Let's go." Ignore him. We're gonna be late for class. The tension between the two men instantly shifted. Both of them looked at me. Joe lit up like sunshine, clearly flattered. He beamed. Just a little affection from me was enough to send him over the moon. He leaned in close and slung an arm around my shoulder, ruffling my hair. "Anything you say." Augustine's face twisted, pure rage. He saw we were leaving and lunged forward to grab me. But Joe had already moved, smacking his hand away hard. Joe stood in front of me, shielding me completely. His expression was cold. "What do you think you're doing to my girlfriend?" "You're what?" That shriek, sharp and disbelieving, didn't come from Augustine. I turned my head, and saw Marco and Nestor standing a few feet away, both having appeared out of nowhere. In that moment, I realized, yeah, we weren't making it to class today. Marco stepped closer, eyes narrowing as he scanned me and Joe. Gone was his usual sweet boy act. His tone turned sarcastic, even nasty. How long have you been dating and you're already calling her your wife? Got no shame? Sis, listen to me. You can't trust guys like him if you're really desperate for a boyfriend. I guess I could lower my standards and volunteer. Joe actually laughed out of sheer disbelief. Flirting with someone else's girl right in front of him? Who's the shameless one here? The two of them started bickering like children. It wasn't exactly threatening, but it was embarrassing as hell. I even saw some students nearby sneakily lift their phones to film the scene, trying, and failing, to look casual. The last thing I wanted was to end up on the university's gossip page. Caught in a juvenile turf war, I tugged on Joe's sleeve, signaling him to leave. Just then, Nestor, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. His words were calm, but they sliced right through me like a blade. Elise. So anyone who's nice to you, you'll just fall for them. Is that it? I wasn't surprised that Nestor had dug into Joe's background. Anyone who wanted to know could easily find out everything. Joe hadn't exactly been subtle. His pursuit of me had been loud, fiery, and very, very public. He had transferred into our class just this semester. Good looking, sure, and in decent shape, but I hadn't paid him much attention at first. We chatted a few times, got along fine, grabbed a meal here and there, solved a few math problems together. Then the news broke that I'd split with Nestor. 3 days into my leave, Joe found me at the hospital, and just like Nestor, he was unbelievably attentive, tried everything to cheer me up. But unlike Nestor, Joe never hid how he felt. He confessed, again and again, openly, sincerely, boldly. It was like he was ready to rip out his heart and put it in my hands. I observed him quietly for a long time, and after getting a response from the private investigator I'd hired, I said yes. I became his girlfriend. The sun was harsh and blinding, almost hateful in its brightness. Snapping out of it, I turned to Nestor, still waiting for my answer. I smiled wide, and said, yeah, so what? I like whoever's useful to me, everyone, except my ex. Chapter 7. Honestly, I didn't expect it, that my relationship with Joe would shake those three up this much. Looks like when I first said I had a boyfriend, none of them actually believed me. Joe and I made it just in time for second period. There weren't many seats left, so we had to sit in the front row. As soon as we sat down, Marco swooped in and plopped down on the other side of me. Right after that, the 2 seats behind us creaked loudly as they were pulled out. Joe clenched his jaw, clearly annoyed, but there was nothing he could do. And that's how I sat through the entire class, surrounded by a tense, almost suffocating undercurrent. The only one who cracked was Marco. With his usual fake pitiful tone, he leaned in and whispered, "Hey, sis, are you serious about him?" When I didn't respond, he looked down, disappointed, dazed. The other two? Surprisingly composed. After class, Joe leaned over and said something to me. I nodded, but truthfully, I didn't hear a word. Probably about ordering my favorite takeout, or that he bought me flowers or a dessert. It didn't matter. I leaned closer and, like giving a reward, pressed a kiss to his cheek. Clatter. Behind me, pens and books hit the floor all at once. Chairs screeched against the tiles, but right in the eye of the storm, we acted like nothing happened. I stayed calm. Joe, on the other hand, his face flushed beet red the moment I kissed him. Steam practically rose off his head. His eyes lost focus completely, and still, he stared at my lips, swallowed hard. It wasn't enough for him. Almost instinctively, he leaned in for another kiss, but his lips met the back of a man's hand instead. Joe's expression shifted instantly. He jerked back, frustrated, then looked up, eyes sharp. His gaze met Augustine's midair. It felt like sparks flew on contact. The very next second, they both stood up. Just as it looked like fists might fly, I called out, "Augustine." Their bodies froze mid-motion. Augustine turned to look at me. There was something strange in his eyes. Expectation. What was he expecting? What did he think I was going to say? I smiled slightly and looked him in the eyes, then said, slow and clear, even if you chased him off, I still wouldn't choose you as my boyfriend. His face went blank. Then, like he'd been jabbed with a needle, his reaction exploded. He scoffed, like he'd just heard the world's dumbest joke. A sneer twisted his face, equal parts disbelief and rage. Finally, he snapped. Who do you think you are? What makes you think I'd want to be your boyfriend? You're delusional. Seriously, go take a good look in the mirror. Look at your Lou family. He was so angry he'd lost control, lashing out wildly, like he'd completely lost the upper hand. Nestor suddenly jabbed an elbow into him, cutting him off. Shut up, you'll regret it later. Again. Then Nestor looked at me. For once, there was something different in his expression. Wait, confusion. He said, I have just one question. I thought it was going to be something awful again. The smile on my lips faded. I frowned, watching him warily. But what he asked caught me off guard. Why did you never kiss me? The words I had ready to fire back just fell apart in my throat. I even wondered if I'd misheard him. What? Nestor repeated, like he wasn't letting go without an answer. I was with you longer than him, spent more time with you than he did. So why did you kiss him, but never once kiss me first? Chapter 8. The classroom was empty and quiet, only a few of us left. Nestor's question landed heavy, echoing in the silence. Everyone was waiting for my answer, but all I felt was the urge to laugh. Coldly, I let my gaze sweep over the three of them, memorizing the looks on their faces. Then I let out a scoff. A complete liar like you has the nerve to ask something like that? What? Did all of you lose your memories? Forget that I said we're done? That we're not friends anymore? Right in front of them, I reached for Joe's hand, and with the same cold impatience they'd once used on me countless times, I said, get lost. Don't bother me again. Joe squeezed my hand back, like a rooster who'd just won a fight. He strutted proudly as he led me toward the door. Just as we reached it, Marco suddenly yelled. I never agreed to stop being friends. Sis, I admit, I was wrong to bet on you, to mess with you. Punish me however you want. But please, don't stay mad at me and don't leave with him, okay? His eyes were red, his expression pitiful. This time, it didn't look like he was faking it. He murmured, I just realized. I actually like you. But the only response he got was a merciless laugh. I asked him, genuinely curious, you're like, what's that supposed to be? Some kind of treasure? It doesn't surprise me. It just disgusts me. Marco stared at me in disbelief, tears falling freely now. I used to treat him like a real little brother, coddled him, forgave his offenses as childish nonsense. But over and over again, he trampled my heart like dirt beneath his shoes. I didn't even glance back, just walked out. In Joe's car, he was doing everything he could to cheer me up. Then I suddenly asked him, how many days have we been together? Joe blinked, then answered automatically, 29 days. I was tired of everything. I just wanted it to end, so I smiled and said, then come to my place tomorrow. We've been dating a full month, we should celebrate, right? Joe had never heard of a 1-month anniversary celebration before, but he nodded eagerly. He even said he'd better hurry and find the perfect gift. I told him I'd prepared a gift too, something he'd never expect. He asked what it was. I told him it was a surprise. He got more and more curious, more and more excited. The next day, when he arrived at my place, I blindfolded him with a silk ribbon. His breathing slowed. His Adam's apple bobbed nervously. In disbelief, he asked, babe, your gift. Is it? Shoo, don't guess. I pressed a finger to his lips, then gently led him to a chair and sat him down. Joe, tense and unsure, clutched his pants and sat up straight. But still, he obeyed every word. Even when I asked him to undress, even when I tied him up with ropes, he followed along, ears red, only muttering under his breath. So this is what you're into? His breathing grew heavier. His body started reacting. Everything was ready. I opened the door. Footsteps echoed as a few people entered the room. Joe stiffened, He turned his head, alarmed. "Babe, is someone else here?" The next second, the ribbon covering his eyes was pulled off. He squinted at the sudden light, then his pupils shrank to pinpoints. He stared at the camera in front of him, and the 5 burly men standing silently around the room. I didn't smile. Not anymore. Expressionless. I asked, "Joseph, do you like the gift I prepared for you?" Chapter 9. The moment he appeared at the hospital, I already had my suspicions, and sure enough, the private investigator I hired brought back results that shocked me. Joe's real name was Joseph Lin, the illegitimate son of the Lin family. Augustine Lin's half-brother, one he didn't even know existed. He'd been raised abroad with his mother, but as he got older, so did his ambition. He believed he was smart enough, capable enough, to replace Augustine, so he came back in secret. He hated the brother who'd grown up as the golden boy, showered in resources and wealth. He hated him, and hated everything he loved. So when he realized Augustine's attention always drifted toward me, he set his sights on me, too, even though Augustine and I had never acknowledged any feelings between us. To outsiders, his affection was painfully obvious, like a boy in love for the first time, clueless about what to do. So he teased, acted out, did whatever he could to draw attention. Joseph wanted to destroy him, but Augustine was too hard to get to, so he settled for me, hoping my ruin would hurt Augustine just as deeply. I became the target of his revenge. If I hadn't later found Samuel, who'd been hiding from loan sharks, and forced the truth out of him, I might never have known what Joseph had truly been hiding in his twisted little mind. "Why didn't you suspect Nestor?" Joseph asked. The one who ended up getting lucky in the end, wasn't it him? He had dropped the act completely, glancing at the men around him, trying to stall for time. He didn't know, even though the kidnapping had overlapped with the boys' disgusting bet. I never once suspected any of the 3 of them. We grew up together. I knew them. If I had hated the wrong person, wouldn't that have played right into Joseph's hands? I didn't give him time to stall. I turned and walked out. The 5 men I'd hired moved in. Joseph panicked. He screamed my name, begged me to stop, begged me not to do this. But he didn't get to choose, just like I hadn't gotten to choose back then. Soon, a thick stack of photos was developed. Exactly what I needed. I'm not heartless, so I didn't let those men actually assault him. They just used props, and captured every moment of Joseph's humiliation. His tears, his fear, shot after shot. Now, if he ever dares to come near me again, he'll have to ask himself whether he's ready for the world to see what I'm holding. First, I cut ties. Then, I got revenge. After everything, I felt completely drained. I took a week off, shut myself in, and finally started to recover. I was just about ready to go back to school and begin again, when I got a call from my dad. Chapter 10. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a luxuriously decorated room, dim and suffocating with the curtains tightly drawn. A wave of heat surged through my body, smothering and disorienting me until I was forced awake. I gasped for breath, quickly shrugging off my jacket. But it didn't help. My throat was dry. My head was a mess. Sweat clung to my hair as I stared blankly at the ceiling, sluggishly trying to piece together what happened. Then, the blanket next to me shifted, and a low, hoarse voice said, "You're awake." I jumped, startled, but the voice was familiar. Hesitantly, I asked, "Augustine?" He didn't answer, but I could hear his ragged, shallow breaths, just like mine. Even in my dazed state, I realized the truth. We had both been drugged, locked in the same room, the same bed. Who? The more I thought, the colder I felt inside. I didn't want to face the answer clawing at the edge of my mind. Then, Augustine lost control. He suddenly rolled over and pinned me beneath him. Hot kisses rained down messily on my face. While kissing, he choked out desperate questions. "Why didn't you answer my texts? Why did you block me? Do you hate me that much? Those things I said to you before, I didn't mean them." I was lashing out. I didn't want to cut ties with you. Not even a little. I couldn't take it anymore. I kicked him, but my body was weak. My strength gone. The kick barely made contact. I could only shout, "Shut up! I don't want to hear it. Get off me." Stop pulling at my clothes. His movements halted, just for a second, like he was caught in some terrible inner battle. But in the end, the words he chose to offer were, I can help your family's company. Elise, I can fix this for you. With that compensation, something that should have sounded important, he convinced himself it was enough. Desire won, and all my resistance, my struggles, became fuel for his fire. In that burning, suffocating blaze, I came to a bitter realization. The man I once truly loved was no better than this. No one came to save me. The door finally burst open, kicked down from the outside. Nestor was the first to enter. He froze at the sight of the tangled mess on the bed, then turned, stopping the others behind him from coming in, except Marco. Marco charged in like a cannonball. He grabbed Augustine and ripped him off of me, fists already flying, face twisted in rage. He shouted, Do you even know what you're doing? We agreed to fair competition, and you resort to this? Augustine had no defense, but after a few solid punches, when Marco still wouldn't stop, he started fighting back. The two of them went at it, fists landing hard and fast. I ignored them, my gaze locked on the one still standing in the doorway, Nestor. Slowly, I lifted my hand toward him. He hesitated no longer. Nestor strode forward and wrapped me in his coat, gently covering me up. He held me and whispered, It's okay now. It's over. I'm here. In his arms, I wept silently, looking into his eyes. I whispered with grief and trembling honesty, The one I liked, all along, was you. I'm sorry. Nestor's hand clamped tightly around my wrist. His breathing was rough for a few seconds, then slowly steadied. He released my wrist, only to pull me into a tighter embrace. Over and over, he murmured, You didn't do anything wrong. Don't apologize. Don't ever apologize. You're not the one at fault. His voice cracked, choked with regret. He whispered, It's me. I realized it too late. Chapter 11. Nestor carried me out of that place. He came prepared, with more people. Augustine and Marco didn't have a chance to stop him. And then my father finally burst through the crowd. Too late. He couldn't understand why. After he drugged Augustine, it was Nestor who walked away with his daughter. But it didn't matter to him. Whoever took me away was now responsible for paying up. His company was on the verge of collapse. He needed someone to bail him out. No questions asked. He wasn't ready to give up. He thought he was still young, still capable of a comeback, a second rise to glory. So he set the trap. He shouted after us, even called my name, but I buried my face in Nestor's shoulder, holding tightly to his neck, said nothing, just cried quietly. My tears slowly soaked through Nestor's shirt. I knew he had no defense against this kind of thing. Sure enough, I didn't even have to beg him. His expression turned cold, and he gave the order, Hold my father back. Don't let him come near. Then he had someone call his own father, asked him to make a move, make sure, in the shortest time possible, that my father went completely bankrupt, with no chance of recovery. It was only then that I looked up from his arms, red-eyed, and choked out, I want to see my mom. Nestor looked down at me. His eyes overflowed with tenderness. He kissed my forehead and whispered, Okay, I'll take you. Nestor found my mom in a private hospital, locked away. She wasn't in a great mental state. But thankfully, she was physically unharmed. In many ways, she and I really were cut from the same cloth. It wasn't until now that she finally told me everything. Turns out, all my previous suspicions were wrong. Our downfall had nothing to do with the other three families. It was my dad, stuck in the past, refusing to change with the times, still running the company with outdated methods from 20 years ago. Business kept getting worse. He spiraled, started drinking, cheated. When my mom found out, they fought constantly. But for my sake, she kept it all hidden, hoping he'd wake up someday and return to the family. Instead, he got worse. Worse to the point that he tried to trade me for a second chance at wealth. That first awkward matchmaking dinner? It had been his idea. After that, my mom got suspicious. So to keep his plans from being exposed too soon, he found an opportunity to lock her away in the hospital. And just then, I was too busy dealing with the aftermath of the kidnapping. I didn't want to worry my family, so I kept my distance, which is how I walked straight into my father's trap. But it's over now. My mom saw the truth. She filed for divorce. And Nestor, using the excuse that I needed care, brought me back to his private apartment. Chapter 12. Because he had me all to himself, Nestor and Augustine, Marco, officially fell out. The three of them had been inseparable since childhood. Now, every time they crossed paths, it nearly came to blows. I didn't need to say a word. Nestor hated Augustine deeply, a man who tried to steal the woman he loved. That hatred runs to the bone. Truth is, after being drugged, Augustine still had the chance to stop. But he didn't leave. He stayed with me, waited until the drug took full effect, until he lost control. And I was the one who suffered for it. Forced, violated. All I could do was cry, curled in Nestor's arms. That secret I'd buried for over 10 years, cracked open from the pain. The one I'd always loved was him. With his intelligence, he must have sensed something between me and Augustine, but he was never sure. So when he heard me say I'm sorry, he was both overjoyed and completely unprepared. He never expected it to be him. And after that, all he felt was guilt. Overwhelming, suffocating guilt. He did something then, something that shattered his relationship with Augustine completely. He helped Joseph. He gave him the perfect opening to return. Just as Augustine was being condemned by everyone, the Lin family was thrown into chaos. For the first time in over 20 years, Augustine Lin's position as heir was truly shaken. He was too busy putting out fires to go after Nestor for revenge. But Marco? He still clung on, relentlessly. Nestor hadn't found the right weapon to bring him down yet. So for now, he was stuck dealing with it. I gave him some half-hearted comfort, a few casual kisses, and that was enough to keep him calm. It had to be, after what I'd been through. Nestor treated me like glass, too scared to touch me, afraid to break me all over again. So he never pushed, never dared ask for more. While he was busy fending off the other two, my mom finalized the divorce and left the country, with everything arranged by me. And on the day I planned to leave, I thought about it for a while, and left Nestor a gift. A simple pen, nothing fancy. But maybe, its purpose was to remind him, now and then, of the beautiful moments we once had, so he couldn't completely escape from the memory. He had already fallen for me long ago. I realized that far too late. Too bad. He never saw it clearly, and by the time I did, he had already lied to me, already shattered the feelings I had. The sun rose bright and clear. It was a perfect day. I landed on the far side of the ocean and turned on my phone. 70 missed calls from Nestor, over 100 messages. I never knew he could be so relentless. Just as I paused to think, another call from him lit up my screen. I didn't hesitate. Blocked the number, powered off the phone, took out the SIM card and tossed it. When I looked up, my mom was waving at me from a distance. I grabbed my suitcase and ran to her. From this moment forward, my new life begins.